Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening, and welcome into the Week 8 version of the TSF GamePlan show. My name is Safwan Alvi. I will be your host as always, and I am joined by my partner in crime, TSF writer, contributor, and friend, Brandon Lampley. And again, we are TriStateFootball.com, your go-to destination for all things high school football in Southwest Ohio, Eastern Indiana, and Northern Kentucky. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on Twitter and Instagram at TS Football. Again, that's at TS Football. You can also like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Just on those search browsers, just type in TriStateFootball.com and it'll take you right there. And you can listen to our podcast anywhere you get your podcast. We have our TSF Game Plan show, our Monday review show as well, and head coaches interviews, pregame and postgame. Just anywhere you get your podcast, just type in TriStateFootball.com. We appreciate everyone listening. And Brandon, it is week 8 in the Tri-State area, right? The clock has struck the second week of October. The regular season is flying by. We have been so spoiled getting so many good matchups week in and week out, right? We've had number 1 versus number 2 multiple times already this season, and we have more top 5 matchups to talk about. Playoff seedings are going to get taken care of here in the next couple weeks. And actually, it looks like Brandon may have not have been here. But again, we're doing this TriStateFootball.com. Again, it's Safwan LV talking all things. I'm going to get Brandon right up in here again. Just give me 1 second. We're just having a little technical difficulties right here. And there we go. All right. Yeah, Brandon is back. There we go. There we go. Brandon is back.
Did it kick?
Yeah, I think it took you off the stage a little bit for a second, Brandon, but I think we're good to go. Can you hear me? Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me? Again, apologies for that. Brandon is back, and we are all good to go. Again, it's the Week 8 TSF Game Plan show. So, Brandon, I want to jump right into it because we have a interstate matchup that I want to get into, right? Another top 5 matchup. Again, we've been spoiled with these. It does look like Brandon is having a hard time connecting with us again. But until he gets back in here, we can talk about that Highlands versus Elder game. Elder coming in as the number 1 team now after defeating Moeller at the pit. What an environment that was. Elder beating Moeller. Excellent game. Elder, first time in well over a decade that they've won the GCL South. They had a sold-out house at the pit. Highlands coming into this game 6-1. Just had a big win against Covington Catholic last week in one of the most fun and exciting games that you would see. One of the best teams in the entire tri-state area. Actually, the best team in Northern Kentucky, according to TriStateFootball.com. Elder, the best team in Southwest Ohio. And this is a game, it's going to be fun because it's at the pit again. And you can imagine and you can expect a big audience here, right? Probably not as many as we saw for the Moeller game, but Highlands is playing well on both sides of the ball. Rio Littmer is playing good football. And Caden Eastep is playing good football as well. And it looks like we do have Brandon back. Brandon, can you hear me? Brandon, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't know why it keeps kicking me out, though.
Good, no worries. Again, I was just breaking down the Elder game while I was just waiting for you. But now that we have your perspective, I was just talking about Highlands and Elder, and it was a packed house at Elder last week. First sold-out game and coming up on a decade. And number 1 team in Southwest Ohio, number 1 team in Northern Kentucky. It's a top 5 matchup. So, Brandon, give me your thoughts on both of these teams and what you're expecting from this really fun interstate matchup.
Yeah, well, I expect a high octane type of game, a lot of scoring, and maybe some good defense mixed in there at the same time. I heard you talking about Rio Littmer, great quarterback, has a lot of ability, and can really make some things, happen for Highlands. And Taden Lorenzen, he's been doing everything for the Bluebirds, tight end, running back, running the ball, catching the ball. He's been great this year. I think somewhere in 14 total touchdowns, I believe, and really just leading their team, the heart and soul of their team. And when you look at Elder, coming off that big win last week, the Caden Eastep, and man, Jackson Roof, what a big game he had last week at wide receiver, tops in the GCL, and he's really doing his thing. I think the Elder defense makes a difference in this game. They really gave Moeller some issues last week, and I like Elder in this one. and they're at home.
Yeah, Elder playing at home is a big deal. Highlands, again, it was one of the most fun games you'll ever see against that Covington Catholic team. It was 31-28. The only loss Highlands has was to that Boyle County team. And remember, the Highlands had a chance to win that game at the end. There's nobody that Highlands can't play against. Bob Spire's doing an excellent job offensively, defensively. Again, this is going to be such an awesome game. It's another top 5 matchup. I do lean Elder in this game. I think the defense steps up, which is the main difference, I think, with this Elder team, right? With their first GMC championship in, however many years. Offensively, they're always pretty good, right? When they had Matthew Luby at quarterback a couple of years ago, and they continue to do this. But the defense is really, playing stout. We saw it against Moeller. This Elder team, Brandon, it's a state championship contender, right? I think Highlands is too, but I don't think there's anybody in Ohio that Elder can't beat, and we saw that last week.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because they're reminding me a lot of their last state title runs. I believe it was back in back to back 02, 03, 03, 04 with Rob Florian at quarterback and Bradley Gladhar, some of those guys that I remember watching. And they had a rolling back in those days, early 2000s. I remember they beat Maurice Claret's high school team down here in like 2001. That was really the height of Elder football, in my opinion, and they have a chance to get back to that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elder's last state championship run was back in 2019 when they made it, and they did come up short against that Pickerington Central team. So again, Elder, they're not foreign to state championship appearances. They're not foreign to deep playoff runs, and because they're playing in the GCL South, right? They're going to be battle tested. They're playing good teams every year. Again, at the Pit, 2 weeks in a row, party on the West Side, one of the biggest games that you can find. Again, so now I want to talk about our next game, which is a team that maybe these teams aren't ranked, Brandon, but we have a lot to talk about because we're talking Harrison versus Talawanda, a little SWAC action coming up, right? The Southwest Ohio Conference. Harrison coming in at 5-2, Talawanda coming in at 7-0. And when we talk about Talawanda, right, being 7-0 is awesome, but they have one of the leading rushers in the entire nation on their team, right? Number 7, according to Max Prep, in the entire country, not Southwest Ohio, not the tri-state area, in the entire country, Lance Cantrell. Brandon, tell me about this young man and what you're looking forward to in this really fun SWAC matchup.
Yeah, Lance Cantrell, he's a workhorse. He's going to get the ball 25 to 30 times a game. He's going to get it going outside. He's going to get it in the box. He's going to get it any way he can get it. Coach Andy Stuckard, they're going to give it to him. And he's been showing his worth, really. I mean, just repeatedly running over defenders and running through teams for this entire season. And when you look at Harrison, I think they're a tough team. I think Josh Adelsberger at wide receiver, Brady Lawhorn, the quarterback, they can do some things too. I kind of believe, and I hate to say this, but part of me believes Talawanda may not have had the toughest of times with their schedule so far. I know we're 7 games in. That's a long time. But looking at it deeply, I could see this game possibly getting out of hand in Harrison's favor
Wow.
if I'm correct on that. It's just something I feel. It's just a feel and something I see a little bit. But we'll find out. They'll be hyped up in Oxford. They've probably been hearing the same things of we haven't really played anybody yet. I think this will be by far their toughest test. I like Harrison on the road.
Yeah, Talawanda's non-conference schedule, right? They did play Taylor, which was a really good team last year, right? They're still a pretty good team, but they did win that game by 30. Their offense is playing well, obviously with Lance Cantrell, and their defense, Brandon's playing pretty well, right? In their last 5-6 games, they've only given up 20 points one time, and that was a week 3 game to Eaton, in which they won 45-20. But again, Carroll, Ross, Northwest, and I'm assuming that's where you're kind of going with the schedule in terms of they've kind of played the competition that isn't exactly the best, right? Harrison has maybe played a little bit of a tougher competition because they played East Central, right? Remember, Harrison always plays that East Central game over there on the over in St. Leon, and Harrison, that's a battle of 74 right there. So maybe being battle tested against a team like East Central and battle tested, versus other teams really could help them in their favor, right? And this is not a shot to Talawanda, right? They're still 7-0. They're still in, line to go to the playoffs, and there's still so much to like about with their team. But you think this strength of schedule plays a role, and this might be the first loss of Talawanda. And do you think they're a team that maybe could bounce back pretty quickly with the awesome start that they've had, 7-0?
Yeah, man, and obviously, like you said, not a shot to Talawanda. You got to play who's in front of you,
Yeah.
and whoever it is, you come out, you've been dominating, you win. That's what you're supposed to do. Of course, they could bounce back, but along with a weaker schedule, in my opinion. It's just adversity in general. Obviously, no one has been able to stop Lance Cantrell in the run. I believe Harrison, with their program, their coaching staff, will have a better plan for that. I could be entirely wrong. I believe they'll have a better plan for that. And then what happens if he's not getting 204 touchdowns. He's had 4 or 5 touchdowns several games this year. So what happens then when there's some adversity in that matter? And I know their quarterback, he's been playing okay. They have a tough defense. Guys like Wyndon Lowe uh, have had great seasons, but we'll see. Like I said, I like Harrison, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and another team that Harrison played out of conference was Loveland, right? Loveland's a very good team over there in the ECC, and they're giving some of the top teams in the ECC a hard time. Loveland is a pretty strong team, so that strength of schedule definitely does favor Harrison, and it's going to be a fun game, right? Talawanda does have home field advantage. They're 7-0. It's a very fun story. Again, a very fun and interesting matchup there. I do want to jump to our next game, Brandon. And we are going right back to the GCL South. I mean, come on now. Another top 10 matchup. It's the gift that just keeps on giving, no matter who plays, right? No matter what, game that we get, it's LaSalle versus X or Moeller versus Elder or X versus Moeller, whatever it is. It's a top 10 matchup, and sometimes more than likely even a top 5 matchup, right? Again, just the gift that keeps on giving. Here are two teams. These teams are interesting, Brandon, especially to say next, because this game is at Balaban Field, right? RDI Stadium. LaSalle coming in at number 10. This St. X team has the capability, especially defensively, to have the best defense in the entire Southwest Ohio, right? Daniel Vollmer, the Braden Rileys, the Grant Lyons. Their defense specifically may be the best or one of the top 2 or 3 best defenses in the area, but the offense still hasn't found a way to find some consistency. Jackson Fry's the quarterback. He's a little inexperienced. He doesn't have a lot of playing time. The offensive line's a little bit young. So tell me about the St. X team. Tell me about this LaSalle team. And again, neither of these teams are going to win the conference, the GCL South, but there's a lot to play for, right, to get your team better for the playoffs coming up. Let me know what's on your mind with this game.
Yeah, the Battle of North Bend Road. I see this as a defensive game. Two tough defenses kind of battling each other. When you look at LaSalle, guys like Colin Woolridge, who's been at the top of the league in tackles, and Rodney Portis, the same. Very tough defensive team. And of course, when you look at St. X, we've talked about their defense all season long. Aiden Reeder, Kobe Clapper, Braden Riley. But as always, I think that X factor is Daniel Vollmer on both sides of the ball. And I've seen the last couple weeks he's got involved on offense a little more, threw a touchdown, I believe, last week, maybe a halfback pass, and things like that. I think he's the difference maker on both sides of the ball. Someone that you can, rely on, experience to make plays. So I would lean to St. X at home, but tapping into college basketball for a second. The Virginia Cavaliers, they've been known as a team for years to be very tough defensively, struggle on the offensive side of the ball. So they sometimes win a lot of games, but their games are ugly and ragged. It's kind of what St. X reminds me of. Just can't get the offense rolling. And if they do, they'll be scary, But I think they have enough to take care of LaSalle. But going forward, I think we'll see some of those same issues we saw against Moeller.
Yeah, and it's if they want to make a deep state championship run, talking about the Bombers here, they're going to have to find some consistency on offense, right? Moving the ball, sustaining some drives. Both of these teams beat an interstate matchup last week, right? The Bombers actually played the number one team in Kentucky, right? They played Louisville Trinity, at least last week going in. Louisville Trinity was the number one ranked team, and Bombers won 14-17, again, on the backs of their defense, right? And LaSalle took care of Ron Colley, right? Indiana Ron Colley, which is a very good team over there in Indiana, right? They've given East Central some hard times over the past couple of years. So Ron Colley, both interstate matchups. And LaSalle, they're going to be so battle tested going into Division II playoffs. And the GCL South champ Elder, they only beat LaSalle by 8 points, right? That was a one possession game. And yes, granted, Mulder did put it to them. It was 42-7. I get that. But this LaSalle team, there's not a team, in Division II or Division I that they really can't compete with, right? They're going to hold their own. They're going to be tough. A.V. Carter at quarterback, Pat McLaughlin, been there, done that, an experienced coach. I think this is going to be a fun game. Again, defensive battle. I'd be surprised, Vernon, if anybody gets to 20 points in this game, with both defenses being as good as they are. If St. X all of a sudden has an offensive burst and they score a couple touchdowns, I could see this being like a 21-24 type of game for St. X and getting up to the points. But I think it's like a 18-14, 19-17 kind of rough, ragged type of a game with all the talent on defense for St. X. And they're going to have to carry them, right? If we're going to be honest, I don't know how much is going to change with the Bombers offense going into the playoffs because the competition is going to continue to get stiffer. If they're going to want to compete for a championship, this defense is going to have to continue to be all world.
Yeah, definitely. They're going to have to make plays. It'd be helpful if they could put points on the board at times. We've seen Braden Riley as a ball hawk in the secondary, turn some of those into scores, or at least big time flips of the field to just lessen the drives on the offense. They can do that, they'll have a chance to beat anybody. And LaSalle, as you said, in Division II, they're going to be a major threat there, especially depending on how the seeding plays out. If they could push off that regional final to Anderson, that would be highly great for them, as you know, but that could be a good game.
Absolutely. Again, very interesting to look forward to. We're going to wrap up GCL South play this week, right? Because we got a couple more weeks to find out where the playoff rankings are going to go. But I do want to go to our last big game of the week, right? To talk about another team ranked in our top 25 that is undefeated, right? In territory that this team is not usually familiar with. Talking some CHL football, right? Number 24, Indian Hill, 7-0, going to Madeira. Right. And in terms for Madeira, this is probably the biggest game they've had since, if I'm not mistaken, 2022, when Wyoming went to Madeira. And that was when CJ Hester was on the team. Right. When CJ Hester was over there at Wyoming, they were undefeated. And Madeira, I believe, was either undefeated or only had one loss. And that was a real big game at Madeira, to close out the season. And Brandon, this is the biggest game since, right? Because you've got an undefeated Indian Hill team who's already beat Wyoming earlier this year. This is going to be a fun matchup. Madeira has so much to play for, and Indian Hill has been absolutely rolling this year.
Yeah, Madeira trying to make a statement to push themselves into playoff consideration. This is the meat of their schedule. Last week, they lost at Wyoming. Tough game out there. End up making a comeback, I believe, but fell short. Chris Stewart does a great job out there. He used to coach at Wyoming as an assistant. He's got the Mustangs playing well, and they got a good running game. And Robbie Lewis, he's got about 500 or so yards rushing. And Blake Opichka, 87 tackles, very solid on the defensive end. And when you look at Indian Hill, they'll need to be solid because Indian Hill, great running game. Evan Riggs at running back, and of course Devlin Daniel, quarterback, loves the run. He's got a chance to maybe get to the 1,000 rushing and passing mark, possibly, depending on how big they can go the next couple weeks. I think it'll be a tough game for Madeira. Just Indian Hill, like you said, rolling, feeling good. So I like the Braves.
Yeah, Indian Hill is 7-0 right now, right? They have so much. Their defense is playing so well. They pitched 3 shutouts in a row, right? Marymount 36-0, at Taylor 52-0, Finneytown 48-0. They've yet to give up more than 14 points in a game. And Brandon, if they win this game, they got a real chance of going undefeated, right? Deer Park is 5-2. There's a lot to like about Deer Park. And then Reading, there's a very good chance that they go into this, playoffs undefeated. And I'm gonna be honest, I like Indian Hill in Division Four. I'm not saying maybe to win it, but I think they can win a couple playoff games, right? Coach Rodenberg has his team playing well. Devlin Daniels a game breaker. I think they can make a deep run of this Division Four playoffs, which is obviously so loaded, right? There's so many good teams, but I think this Indian Hill team is legit.
Very legit, and like you said, great coach who's been there before, been in deep playoff runs, and they got as good a chance as anybody in D4 to make a move.
Absolutely. Again, it's going to be a very fun game over there in the CHL at Madeira. All right, Brandon, before we get out of here, we got to make some rapid fire picks, right? Going to reel off some big games in Southwest Ohio, a couple of GMC games, a couple of GMC games I want to reel off to you, and then tell me who you think wins and why you think they win. How about a top 5 matchup, right? Number 4, Princeton. They've been playing some lights out football as of late. They're going to be taking on Oak Hills at Oak Hills. Is there maybe an upset pick here, or are you rolling with the Vikings?
I'm rolling with the Vikings, but when you go over to Bridgetown area and Oak Hills, they always play well there. They've been tough on defense this year. Um, if they could get some weather to help them out, I feel like this could, if this was a rainy night or something like that, that would give them a chance. But I like the Vikings.
Yeah.
Too much speed, too much firepower. Feeling good, Princeton.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't watched that young man, Zion Neal, he's worth the price of admission. That young man is absolutely fun and electric. He is a pleasure to watch. And Brandon, if Princeton makes a run at this, right, if they make a deep run to Division One, he's going to be the reason why, right, or one of the main reasons why. Just absolutely electric player over there at Princeton. How about a top 20 matchup? Right? How about number 15 Middletown, right, taking on number 20 Mason? Again, this is going to be at Mason. 15 Middletown at number 20 Mason. Both of these teams are very well coached, right? They've won a lot of big games. Tell me what you're thinking of this game.
Yeah, I like Middletown in this one. I like JoJo Ward, as we talked about before. I like Kylie Jones as someone who's turning programs around, and he's got Middletown in great position there in Region Two. But this is kind of similar to our first game, I think. I think Mason, a very tough team, plays well, especially at home. And Middletown, I think they got the win over Lakota East last week. But I still believe, they want to prove something to themselves of and to everybody else of beating so quote unquote good teams, beating teams that have been there before. I think this is another step for them to take, and I think they'll get it done. But Mason, like I said, tough battle. D'Lo Birch running that offense, tough defense, physical. It won't be easy, but I believe in Middletown this year.
Yeah, Mason is trying to find themselves now, right? A 14-13 loss last week against Fairfield. We saw them lose 35-21 against Princeton, right? 2 losses in a row. Mason is trying to figure out where they are. I loved what Middletown did last week, bouncing back against Lakota East after previously losing to Lakota West 27-13. I think that's a big kind of character, kind of bounce back game because I really wanted to see where Middletown was, and they answered the bell. I think they keep this up. I think Khalid Jones is really good, especially bouncing back after a loss, getting a big win at Lakota East. I think they go into Mason and win this game. And then Mason going into the playoffs are going to have to, do some soul searching to kind of get the ball rolling as they try to make a run in the Division One playoffs. There is one more game, Brandon, I want to talk to you about, and this is actually right here in front of me. Oh, yeah, how about Fairfield versus Hamilton, right? Another GMC matchup. Speaking of Fairfield, right, they just went in and beat Mason last week, which is a ranked team. Fairfield beat Lakota West a couple weeks ago, but then they struggled the week after beating Lakota West. It's a hard team. This is a hard team to figure out, right? Fairfield. Hamilton, right? Coach Arby Crouch. They're trying to find themselves too after a couple tough losses early in the season. Where do you have this game going?
I see the same instance of Fairfield happening again. They're going on the road to Hamilton, rivalry game, the Border Bowl, they call it up there when these two teams play each other. And I like Hamilton in this one. They've been playing fairly good football. If you look at their scores, they played Princeton uh, pretty tough. I mean, they had a shootout with Mason uh, that they lost at home. Um, There'll be a little extra in this one. A lot of those kids, Hamilton and Fairfield, They've grown up together. They played youth together. Some of them have went to each other's school and then transferred to the other one because they moved. Lot riding on that game. RV Krause, they need one up there. They need one up there in Hamilton, and I think they're gonna get it Friday.
Yeah, I actually agree. I'm actually going with the Big Blue. I think Fairfield's a pretty good team, but their kind of volatility, I don't love their volatility after playing well. I don't exactly trust them. Again, I think they're a good team, but I don't know if I really trust them in a big moment again, because we thought maybe is this the where they turned the tide after Lakota West, and then they kind of let us down for a little bit. I think Hamilton gets a big win. I agree. I think the defense is a big thing for Hamilton, home field advantage. I do think they get that win. And then real quick before we get out of here, how about the ECC, right? Turpin versus Lebanon, right? Lebanon coming in at number 21. Turpin's playing some good ball, right? They just did lose to Anderson, right? It was a big score, but Brandon, 2.5 quarters in, that was a close game, right? That was a close game with Anderson, and obviously we know Anderson flips a switch, and the game is 3-4 possessions away, and that's fine. But Turpin, they've won a lot of games as of late, right? I like this team. Who do you got? Turpin and Lebanon.
Well, I'm a big fan of the Lebanon Warriors and Coach Michael Failer, and I like what they have going up there. They've been in mostly every game besides the Anderson game, but as you just mentioned, nobody's in that game so far this year. So
Yeah.
I like Lebanon. I like their running game. I like their toughness. Similar to like a Mason, and kind of their seasons are kind of similar. But I'll go with the Warriors.
Yeah, and when I said I like Turpin, I do think I kind of like where their base is. But in this game, I do still like Lebanon to win this football game. I agree they're 5-2, and I like Coach Failer and the crew. But I think Turpin is going to be a tough out for the rest of the season, right? I think they're well coached. That fight against Anderson the first couple quarters, I think that could be a morale boost, right? If we're trying to pick something again. The final score was what it was, but it was a close game at halftime, right? So you can build off of things like that, and you can continue to get better. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us, right? The Week 8 TSF Game Plan Show. I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank everyone for watching, right? Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking a lot about the playoffs, right? Seedings are going to be happening, and Brandon and I will be talking a lot about those rapid-fire picks and talking about the playoffs, and conference winners, again, are going to be mentioned as well. So, again, we got so much to get to over the rest of the season. Again, thank you so much for everyone for joining us. We hope you listen to the podcast as well. For Safwan, Alvi, and Brandon Lampley, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time on the TSF Game Plan Show.